Sarah sat at the small kitchen table, her phone resting in front of her with the screen still lit. The message was short and cheerful, at least. It was meant to be. Family. BBQ this Saturday. Everyone's coming. Bring Amara. The words blinked back at her like a flashing sign. Her first instinct had been to smile. It had been months since she'd seen her extended family, and the BBQ was always a big event. Long tables lined with home-cooked food, kids running through sprinklers, old uncles playing cards under the shade. But as the seconds passed, the excitement slowly faded. Her stomach gave a small twist, and a familiar worry crept in. Amara, Sarah's daughter, was her pride and joy, a sweet, curious, funny 7-year-old who loved art and strawberry ice cream. Right. She had come into Sarah's life 3 years ago when Sarah made the decision to adopt. Amara had big, bright eyes, a smile that lit up the room, and a deep brown skin tone that stood out in Sarah's pale-skinned family photos. Sarah had never cared about that difference to her. Amara was simply her daughter, in case she knew. From small comments over the years that some of her relatives didn't see it that way, she remembered one Thanksgiving, a cousin asking, "So, why didn't you adopt someone who looks more like you?" Another time, an aunt had made a remark about Amara's hair, suggesting it must be so much work to manage. They'd said these things casually, with little smirks, as though they were harmless jokes. But Sarah had seen the look on Amara's face afterward, a tiny frown, a quietness that replaced her usual chatter. Now, the BBQ invitation sitting on her phone, Sarah felt the same tightness in her chest. She pushed her chair back and walked into the living room, where Amara was lying on the floor, coloring a picture of a big castle surrounded by flowers. Her little feet swayed back and forth in the air as she focused on staying inside the lines. "Hey, sweetheart," Sarah said gently, kneeling down beside her. "Guess what? We've been invited to the family BBQ this Saturday." Amara looked up, her eyes lighting up for a moment. "The one with the big yard and the trampoline?" "That's the one." Sarah nodded, forcing a smile. Amara grinned. "Yay. I can bring my bubbles." "Of course you can," Sarah said, brushing her fingers over Amara's curly hair. She hesitated for a second, then added, "It'll be fun. We'll see your uncles and aunts, and some of your cousins will be there too." Amara didn't notice her mother's careful tone. She went right back to coloring, humming softly to herself. Sarah stood up and took a deep breath. She wanted to believe it would all go smoothly, that her family would just see Amara for the wonderful little girl she was. But deep down, she knew there was a chance they might slip back into the same thoughtless remarks, the same glances. She had learned to let some of it roll off her back. But she hated the thought of Amara feeling, even for a second, like she didn't belong. The week passed quickly. Sarah kept herself busy, packing snacks for the drive, picking out Amara's favorite summer dress, making sure they had sunscreen and bug spray. On Friday evening, she ironed a light blue dress for Amara, the one with tiny white flowers printed on it. Amara twirled around the living room in it, giggling. "Do I look pretty, Mommy?" she asked, holding her skirt out. Sarah smiled, her heart swelling. "You look beautiful, just like always." The morning of the BBQ was sunny, with a soft breeze carrying the smell of freshly cut grass. Sarah loaded their things into the car while Amara carefully placed her bubble wand in the back seat. The drive took almost an hour, winding through green fields and small towns, until they reached the familiar neighborhood where Sarah had grown up. As they turned onto her Aunt Linda's street, Sarah felt her pulse quicken. Cars lined the driveway and spilled onto the road. She could already hear music playing and children shouting in the backyard. Amara leaned forward in her seat. "I see balloons," she said excitedly. Sarah parked the car and took a deep breath before stepping out. She smoothed her dress, then walked around to help Amara out of the car. Hand in hand, they walked toward the gate leading to the backyard. The moment they stepped through, the air was filled with the smell of grilled meat and the sound of laughter. A few relatives spotted them and waved. "Sarah, you made it," Linda called from the grill, flipping burgers with a spatula. Sarah smiled politely. "Hi, Linda. Everything smells amazing." Linda's eyes flicked down to Amara, and her smile tightened just a little. "And here's Amara. My, you're growing fast." "Hi," Amara said shyly, holding her bubble wand close. Some of the cousins ran past, chasing each other with water balloons. Sarah led Amara over to an empty picnic table, where they set down their things. For a few minutes, everything seemed fine. People were chatting, the kids were playing, and the music was cheerful. But then it started. A group of older relatives passed by, glancing at Amara with curious expressions. One of them, a man Sarah barely spoke to, chuckled and said, "Wow, she's got quite the hair, huh?" Another woman, sipping lemonade, leaned in toward her friend and whispered something, making them both smirk. Sarah's jaw tightened. She pretended not to hear, but she could see Amara's small shoulders tense as she focused on her coloring book. Throughout the afternoon, it was like that. Little comments here and there. Does she tan in the sun? She must be hard to keep track of in a crowd. Always followed by light laughter, as if it was all just harmless fun. Sarah tried to brush it off, smiling tightly and redirecting conversations, but her heart ached. By the time lunch was served, Sarah found herself watching Amara closely. Her daughter still smiled politely when someone spoke to her, but she wasn't running around with the other kids like she usually would. Instead, she sat at the picnic table, drawing pictures and occasionally blowing bubbles into the breeze. Sarah reached over and squeezed her hand. "You okay, sweetheart?" Amara nodded, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Sarah looked around the yard, feeling a wave of protectiveness. She had promised herself when she adopted Amara that she would always shield her from anything that made her feel small or unwanted. But here they were, surrounded by people who were supposed to be family. And she could already see the shadows their words were casting. She forced another smile, deciding to make the most of the day for Amara's sake. But deep inside, something was building a quiet resolve that she would not let this slide forever. What Sarah didn't know was that before the afternoon was over, something was going to happen that would turn the entire atmosphere upside down. The sun was high now, casting warm golden light over the yard. The smell of grilled burgers and roasted corn drifted through the air, mixing with the sound of chatter, music, and children's laughter. But at the picnic table near the corner, Amara sat quietly, her small hands holding a crayon as she colored in her sketchbook. Sarah sat beside her, keeping a smile on her face, while her mind kept replaying the little comments from earlier. They weren't loud insults. No one was shouting, but they carried a sting all the same. And the worst part was that most people didn't even notice them, or if they did, they stayed silent. "Sarah, come grab a plate," called Aunt Linda. From the grill, Sarah stood up and glanced at Amara. "Want me to get you some food, sweetheart?" Amara looked up and nodded. "Yes, please. Can I have the corn too?" "Of course," Sarah said, brushing a hand over her hair before heading toward the long buffet table. On the way, she passed a group of relatives who were talking and laughing. She caught a fragment of a sentence. "Well, it's just different, seeing her with..." And her name was mentioned in the next breath. The conversation quickly shifted when they noticed her. With everyone suddenly smiling a little too brightly, she didn't respond. She just filled a plate for Amara, a small burger, corn on the cob, and a few strawberries, then one for herself. When she returned to the table, Amara gave her a polite thank you before taking a bite of corn. Trying to lighten the mood, Sarah asked, "So who's winning the bubble contest? You or the wind?" Amara giggled softly. "The wind's cheating." Sarah smiled, relieved to see a little spark in her daughter's eyes. But it didn't last long. After lunch, some of the cousins started organizing a big group photo. "Together by the oak tree," someone called. It was a tradition every year at the barbecue. The whole family would gather for a photo in the same spot. Sarah hesitated, but then turned to Amara. "Come on, let's go be in the picture." They walked over and began finding a spot among the crowd. People shifted to make space. A few smiled at Amara, but others simply gave quick glances, not unfriendly, but not warm either. And then it happened. One of the older aunts, standing a few steps away, looked at Amara and said loudly enough for several people to hear, "She doesn't look like she belongs here, does she?" Her tone was almost joking, but her eyes weren't. A couple of relatives chuckled under their breath. Sarah froze for a moment, her stomach twisting. She could feel the heat rise in her face. She glanced at Amara and saw her daughter smile, fade instantly. Her little hand slipped into Sarah's, holding tighter. Sarah swallowed her anger, not wanting to cause a scene in front of everyone. She squeezed Amara's hand gently and whispered, "You're perfect. Always remember that." The photo was taken, but Sarah barely smiled. She was too busy thinking about how to keep Amara from feeling the weight of those words. After the picture, people began to scatter back to their conversations, games, and food. Sarah and Amara returned to their table. Amara picked up her coloring again, but her movements were slower now, her shoulders slightly slumped. Sarah kept glancing around. She noticed that some family members avoided looking her way. Others seemed awkward, perhaps realizing the aunt's comment had crossed a line. But no one came over to say anything. The afternoon rolled on. Kids squealed as they ran through sprinklers. Music played from a speaker near the grill. Sarah tried to join a few conversations, but she felt out of place. Each time she glanced at Amara, she was reminded of why she had come to give her daughter a happy day, to make memories. But the joy she had hoped for seemed to be slipping away. Then, just as Sarah was wondering whether they should leave early, a low humming sound caught her attention. At first, she thought it was just another car passing by. But the sound grew, louder, closer, until it was clear it was coming up the street toward the house. Heads began to turn, and conversations paused. Even the kids slowed their play to look, through the gaps in the backyard fence. Sarah saw it, a sleek black limousine, polished so well it reflected the sunlight. It rolled slowly into view, its long body gleaming. People exchanged curious looks. No one here ever arrived in a limousine. The car pulled into the driveway and stopped. The driver's door opened, and a man in a black suit and cap stepped out. He walked to the back door and opened it. From the shadows inside, a tall man stepped out, was dressed sharply in a tailored navy blue suit. His shoes shined, his posture confident. He wore dark sunglasses and carried himself with a calm authority. The murmurs around the yard grew louder. "Who's that?" someone whispered, but Sarah recognized him immediately. It was Mr. Johnson, David Johnson, her longtime friend, and Amara's godfather. She hadn't seen him in months. He was always traveling for work, running his company, and attending charity events. Sarah stood up in surprise, but before she could say anything, Mr. Johnson spotted them. His serious expression melted into a wide smile as he walked straight past the curious crowd and knelt down in front of Amara. "There is my princess," he said warmly, opening his arms. Amara's face lit up for the first time that day, jumped from her seat, and hugged him tightly. "Uncle David," he laughed softly. "I was in the area and couldn't miss the chance to see you. I heard you were here today." A few relatives looked on with raised eyebrows. Some whispered to each other. Clearly surprised at the scene, Mr. Johnson reached into a small leather bag. He carried and pulled out a neatly wrapped package. "This is for you," he said to Amara. "It's something very special. I just came from a charity auction, and guess what? Your painting, the one of the big red tree, was sold there." Amara's eyes widened. "Really? Really?" he said, smiling proudly. "And it raised a lot of money for kids who need help with school supplies. You should be proud of yourself." Sarah watched, her heart swelling. She had sent one of Amara's art pieces to a local charity months ago, not realizing it would reach such an audience. As Mr. Johnson stood, he glanced at Sarah and gave her a subtle nod, a silent reassurance. Then he turned to the crowd, his voice calm but firm. "This young lady is going places. She's smart, she's talented, and she's one of the kindest souls I know." The yard was quiet for a moment. People listened, their expressions shifting. A few looked embarrassed. Others suddenly smiled at Amara, as if seeing her in a new light. Sarah knew the rest of the day would feel different now.
Oh.
The black limousine had done more than turn heads, it had shifted the air around them. What neither she nor Amara knew, yet was just how much this moment would stay in people's minds long after the BBQ ended. For a few moments, the backyard seemed frozen in time. The sight of the limousine, the presence of Mr. Johnson, and the warmth in his voice toward Amara had shifted something in the air. The chatter that had filled the space earlier was now a soft hum of whispers. Amara still stood close to him, holding the gift he had brought. Her smile was wide, her eyes bright again, and her shoulders no longer slumped. It was as though a cloud had been lifted from her little world. Mr. Johnson glanced around, greeting a few familiar faces politely before focusing back on Sarah and Amara. "I hope I'm not interrupting your day," he said with a small smile. "Not at all," Sarah replied, her voice warm but carrying a touch of gratitude she couldn't put into words. "You couldn't have picked a better time." He nodded slightly, as if he understood more than she was saying. "Well, I just came from an event downtown. The moment I heard you were here, I thought, I have to stop by. My princess needs to know just how special she is." Amara's cheeks flushed with pride. "They really liked my painting?" "They loved it," Mr. Johnson said, crouching down. "So he was at her eye level. In fact, people asked if you have more. I told them you're just getting started, but one day the world will know your name." A few relatives nearby had edged closer, listening in. Some had skeptical expressions, others looked genuinely curious. Finally, one of the uncles, who had been part of the earlier whispering, cleared his throat. "So, what exactly do you do, Mr. Johnson?" Mr. Johnson smiled politely. "Run a chain of design and construction firms. We also fund community projects and youth programs." He looked down at Amara. "And I happen to have the most talented young artist as my goddaughter." The uncle nodded slowly, as though processing the information. Sarah noticed a shift, small but visible. People who had barely glanced at Amara earlier were now trying to make conversation. Cousin came over and asked what her favorite colors were to paint with. Another relative asked to see the gift Mr. Johnson had brought. Amara, shy at first, began answering their questions. "I like red because it makes the painting feel warm, and blue because it looks like the sky." Her little hands carefully unwrapped the package to reveal a brand new set of professional watercolor paints, the kind she had only seen in art store windows. Gasps of admiration came from a few people nearby. "Wow, those are fancy," someone said. Mr. Johnson smiled. "Only the best for her." Sarah's heart swelled at the sight. She had been silently battling the sting of those earlier comments all afternoon, but now she could see her daughter, standing a little taller, her eyes bright as she spoke. It was as though the presence of this one person, and the way he openly valued her, reminded everyone else that Amara deserved respect. Still, Sarah couldn't ignore the flickers of guilt she spotted in some relatives' eyes. The aunt who had made the "doesn't belong" remark earlier was now unusually quiet, keeping to the far side of the yard. Every so often, she glanced their way, but didn't approach. The atmosphere continued to shift, where before there had been small groups murmuring and smirking. Now there were people coming up to Sarah and Amara, trying to engage in friendly talk. A younger cousin asked Amara if she wanted to join in a game of tag. At first, Amara hesitated, glancing at Sarah. But Sarah gave her an encouraging nod. "Go have fun, sweetheart," she said. And just like that, Amara was running across the lawn. Her laughter mingling with the other children's, her bubble wand was forgotten for the moment as she chased and dodged with the rest of them. Mr. Johnson stood beside Sarah, watching with a faint smile. "She's strong, you know," he said quietly. "Stronger than most adults I've met." "I know," Sarah replied, her voice soft. "But sometimes I wish she didn't have to be." He nodded slowly. "One day those who made her feel small will regret it. But right now, she's out there proving she belongs anywhere she wants to be." Sarah felt a lump in her throat. "Thank you for coming today. You didn't just make her day better. You changed the whole tone of this afternoon." "Family should protect its own," Mr. Johnson said simply. "If they forget that, it's our job to remind them." As the game of tag wound down, Amara came running back, her cheeks flushed and her hair slightly tousled. She was smiling wide, her earlier shyness replaced with joy. She sat down with Sarah and began showing Mr. Johnson her drawings from earlier. He listened intently, asking about each picture as though they were priceless works. Other relatives hovered nearby, watching. A few joined in, complimenting her art. It wasn't lost on Sarah that these were the same people who had kept there. Distanced just an hour earlier, the sun began to dip lower, painting the yard in a warm glow. Dinner was being served, and people moved toward the food tables. Amara was now chatting with two cousins about painting a mural on the side of their playhouse. Sarah allowed herself to relax for the first time that day, tension in her shoulders eased. She still remembered the sting of the earlier remarks, and she knew those moments couldn't be erased. But something had shifted, not because of the limousine itself, but because someone had shown up and treated Amara exactly as she deserved to be treated, with respect, admiration, and love. The rest of the evening passed more easily. Sarah laughed in a few conversations, Amara played freely, and Mr. Johnson stayed by their side until it was nearly time to go. As the sun set and the first fireflies appeared, Sarah knew one thing for certain: this BBQ would be remembered. But not for the reasons some people had planned when it began. What came next, she didn't yet realize, would be the moment that truly sealed the change in how her family saw her daughter. The sky had started to shift into a soft orange and pink as the evening settled in. A gentle breeze carried the smell of grilled vegetables and sweet desserts across the backyard. People were gathering in smaller groups now, their earlier energy mellowing into relaxed conversations. Amara was sitting at the picnic table again, but this time she wasn't alone. Two cousins, a boy and a girl close to her age, were leaning over, asking her questions about painting. Every so often she would look towards Sarah and give a quick, happy smile, as if to say, "I'm okay now." Sarah sat a few steps away, talking quietly with Mr. Johnson. Her mind kept replaying the change she had witnessed. Just hours earlier, people had been making small, thoughtless remarks about her daughter. Now they were curious, even friendly. It was strange how quickly attitudes could shift when someone important showed genuine respect for another person. Mr. R. Johnson sipped from a glass of lemonade, his eyes following Amara's every movement. "She has a way of drawing people in," he said softly. "Give her time, and she'll win over the ones who doubt her." Sarah nodded. "I've seen it happen before, but today it feels different. Today she's not just being polite. She's shining." They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments before Aunt Linda called out, "Dessert time." Tables were suddenly filled with plates of pie, bowls of fresh fruit, and a large cake decorated with colorful frosting. Children ran over to claim their slices, and the adults followed with slower steps. Amara joined Sarah in the line, still chatting happily with her cousins. She pointed at the strawberry pie and whispered, "That one, please." Sarah served her a slice, then grabbed a small plate of fruit for herself, as they found a spot to sit. One of the uncles, who had been quiet all day, walked over. He cleared his throat awkwardly. "Hey, Amara. I just wanted to say, I think it's amazing you're such a good painter. When I was your age, I couldn't even draw a stick figure." Amara giggled. "It just takes practice." Sarah watched, impressed at how naturally Amara accepted the compliment without holding on to the earlier awkwardness. Her daughter had an openness in her heart that Sarah admired deeply. As dessert went on, something else happened. People started asking Mr. Johnson questions, not just about his work, but about how he knew Sarah and Amara. He explained warmly how he had met Sarah years ago, through a community program, and how he had been part of Amara's life since she was a toddler. "She's like family to me," he said, glancing toward Amara with pride. "And she's going to do great things one day." The words hung in the air for a moment. Sarah could see some relatives exchanging glances, perhaps thinking about how little they really knew about her life or her daughter's achievements. Later, as the plates were cleared away, a few kids began playing music from a portable speaker. A soft, cheerful song floated through the yard. Without warning, Amara and her cousins started dancing, laughing as they tried to copy the moves from a video they had seen online. People clapped along, and for the first time all day, Sarah saw her family looking at Amara with genuine enjoyment, not as an outsider, not as someone to comment on, but as part of the moment. Mr. Johnson leaned toward Sarah. "This is what she'll remember," he said. "Not the whispers, not the stares, but this joy." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "I hope so." As the song ended, the group broke into applause, and Amara ran over to Sarah, her cheeks flushed. "Did you see me, Mommy?" "I saw every step," Sarah said, hugging her tightly. "You were amazing." The evening air grew cooler, and the yard slowly filled with the soft hum of conversations winding down. Families began packing up leftovers and folding chairs. Children chased the last fireflies of the night. Sarah and Amara started gathering their things. Mr. Johnson had stepped aside to take a quick phone call, but she could see him nodding toward the limousine driver, signaling they would leave soon. It was then that the aunt who had made the hurtful comment earlier finally walked over. Her expression was uneasy, her hands clasped in front of her. "Sarah," she began quietly, I just wanted to say maybe I shouldn't have joked the way I did earlier. I didn't mean anything by it." Sarah looked at her for a long moment. She could hear the shuffle of feet nearby, the music still playing faintly in the background. Finally, she said calmly, "Words can stick, even when you don't mean them to. Well, just remember that." The aunt nodded, looking down. "I understand." Sarah didn't say more. She turned her focus back to Amara, who was zipping up her small bag. She knew an apology wouldn't erase the moment, but perhaps it was a start. When Mr. Johnson returned, he crouched down again to say goodbye to Amara. "You keep painting," he told her, "and don't forget, I want to see your next masterpiece." "Will," Amara promised, hugging him tightly. The driver opened the limousine door and Mr. Johnson stepped inside. Before the door closed, he looked at Sarah and said, "You're doing an incredible job." Sarah smiled softly. "Thank you." The limousine pulled away slowly, its glossy surface catching the last bit of sunset. As it disappeared down the street, Sarah turned to see several relatives watching it leave. Some still seemed surprised. Others looked thoughtful. It didn't matter to Sarah whether they were impressed by the car, Mr. Johnson's status, or Amara's talent. What mattered was that, for the rest of that evening, her daughter had been seen for who she was, not judged for how she looked, as they headed toward their own car. Amara slipped her hand into Sarah's. "Today was fun," she said simply. Sarah squeezed her hand. "I'm glad, sweetheart." She glanced back at the backyard one last time. The day had begun with tension and quiet hurt, but it was ending with something closer to understanding. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, and for now, that was enough. What Sarah didn't know was that this day would be talked about in her family for years, not because of the BBQ food, or the games, or even the limousine, but because of the moment everyone was reminded of the simple truth. Love, kindness, and respect are far more valuable than any first impression. The drive home was quiet at first. The sky was a deep blue, and a soft glow settled on the road ahead. Amara sat in the back seat with her new watercolor set on her lap, holding it carefully like a treasure. Sarah checked the mirror every few minutes. She watched her daughter's face, calm now, though still thoughtful. The day had been long. It had started with small hurts and ended with kindness. That mixture was heavy and light at the same time. "Are you tired?" Sarah asked. Softly. "A little," Amara said, "but I'm happy." "What made you happy?" Sarah asked. Amara smiled to herself. "The dancing, and Uncle David. And when the cousins asked about my painting," she paused. "And when you said I was perfect." Sarah felt a warm ache in her chest. "You are," she said. "You always are." They reached home just after sunset. Sarah helped Amara carry in her things. They put the watercolor set on the dining table as if it were a trophy. Amara changed into pajamas and brushed her teeth. Before bed, she pulled out her sketchbook and showed Sarah a page with swirls of blue and red. "This is the red tree," she said proudly, "the one Uncle David talked about." "It's beautiful," Sarah said. "It looks warm. It looks alive. Can I paint more tomorrow?" Amara asked. "You can paint every day," Sarah said, kissing her forehead, "as long as you want." That night, after Amara fell asleep, Sarah sat in the quiet living room. She held a cup of tea and let her thoughts slow down. Replayed the afternoon like a gentle movie, the quick glances, the small jokes that did not feel like jokes, the heavy stillness around the group photo, then the long car gliding up the street. The driver in the neat suit, Mr. Johnson's calm voice, Amara's glow returning to her face like the sun breaking through clouds. It was not the limousine itself that had changed things. It was what? It carried someone who looked at her daughter with full respect and joy, and did so openly, with no hesitation or apology. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Aunt Linda. "Thank you for coming today. I hope Amara had a good time. Please tell her the strawberry pie is waiting for her next time." Sarah read the message twice. It felt gentle, did not erase the hard parts, but it did soften the edges. She typed back, "Thank you for hosting. Amara had a good time. She loved the dancing." Then she set the phone down and took a deep breath. In the morning, Sarah woke to a bright, clear day. She found Amara at the dining table, already painting. The new watercolors were laid out in a neat rainbow. A glass of water sat beside them. Amara's first brushstroke was careful and sure, as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. Sarah made breakfast and watched her paint. The picture slowly became a garden with tall flowers and a blue sky. She worked with patience, mixing colors with tiny circles of the brush. "Do you want to tell me more about how you felt yesterday?" Sarah asked, placing a plate of toast on the table. Amara thought for a moment. "At first I felt small," she said honestly. "Then I felt seen." Sarah nodded. "It's okay to feel both. You were very brave." "Brave." Amara tilted her head. "Yes," Sarah said. "Brave to keep smiling. Brave to keep being you." A few days passed, each one steady and calm. Sarah went to work, and Amara went to school. In the evenings, they painted red stories and shared little jokes. But something else began to happen. Messages started arriving from relatives who had been at the BBQ. A cousin sent a picture of the group photo and wrote, "Next time, Amara has to stand in the front with her art." Another cousin asked if Amara could help paint a small mural on their playhouse. Even the aunt who had made the hurtful comment sent a longer message. She wrote, "I was thoughtless. I am sorry. I'm learning. I hope I can show that next time." Sarah took time to reply to each message. She didn't rush. She didn't try to fix everything at once. She let her words be simple and honest. "Thank you for saying that. We can help with the playhouse. We'll see at the next family day." She did not pretend the past had not happened, but she did not carry it around like a heavy bag either. She decided to hold on to what would help Amara grow: the support, the new curiosity, the chances to create. On Friday evening, Mr. Johnson called. "I have an idea," he said, his voice bright. "There's a community event next month. A day. Want to feature young artists? Nothing large or complicated. Just a small table where kids can share their drawings and talk about what they love. I thought of Amara first. No pressure. Only if she wants." Sarah looked across the room at her daughter, who was humming while she painted little golden dots across a blue sky. "I think she would love that," Sarah said. When she told Amara about the event, Amara's eyes grew wide. "People will come to see my art." "Yes," Sarah said. "And you can tell them what each picture means." Amara folded her hands in front of her chest. "I want to make a new red tree," she said, "but bigger, with soft light around it. Not glowing," she added quickly, as if she had a special rule in her head. "Just soft." "Soft is perfect," Sarah said with a smile. They began to plan. Not a strict plan, just a list on a piece of paper. 3 paintings, 1 sketchbook, 1 box of watercolors, a sign with my name. Amara carefully wrote her name in large letters, then added a small heart next to it. She practiced saying, "Hi, my name's Amara, and I like making warm colors." She practiced again until it felt natural and fun. The weekend after that, they visited Aunt Linda's, again this time for a smaller get-together. Just a movie night in the backyard. Sarah had wondered if they should go. She wanted to protect Amara from any repeat of hurtful moments. But she also wanted to give family a chance to grow. They decided to try. They packed a blanket, a thermos of hot cocoa, and a small bag of cookies. The backyard looked different in the evening light. A projector cast a friendly old movie onto a white sheet. The sound of crickets mixed with quiet laughs. When they walked in, people waved. A cousin ran over to tell Amara that the playhouse wall was ready for painting whenever she was. Aunt Linda handed Sarah a mug of cocoa and asked, "How's the art coming?" Her tone was simple, curious, and kind. It was a small thing, but Sarah felt it. The air was easier to breathe. During the movie, Amara leaned her head on Sarah's shoulder. "I'm not scared here," she whispered. "You don't have to be," Sarah whispered back. Midway through the film, the aunt who had apologized came over and sat on the edge of their blanket. She spoke quietly. "I want to learn how to be better," she said. "If I say something wrong again, please tell me. Don't let it sit." Sarah looked at her for a long moment and nodded. "Okay," she said. "We can do that." They watched the rest of the movie together in a comfortable silence. It felt like a small new beginning. In the days that followed, something else changed in Sarah. She felt steadier inside. She set gentle boundaries that were clear. If someone said something careless, she responded right away, not with anger, but with calm truth. "That joke doesn't feel kind," she would say. "Please don't talk about my daughter like that," and then she would move on. She learned that she did not have to carry every comment. She only had to protect what was precious. Amara's painting table grew busier. She made the bigger red tree. She painted a garden with a winding path and tiny lights that looked like stars at the grass line. She painted 2 hands, one small and one big, holding a paintbrush together. When she finished that last one, she said, "This one is us." Sarah felt her eyes sting and nodded. "It's us." The day of the community event arrived with bright weather and friendly noise. Children stood behind small tables with their drawings clipped to boards. Parents took pictures. Volunteers handed out little cups of lemonade. Mara stood behind her table with the 3 paintings lined up. She wore a simple dress and her favorite sneakers. Her hair was neat and soft around her face. People came by and asked questions. Mara smiled and answered in her clear little voice. She told them that red felt warm to her and blue felt calm. She told them that she liked painting trees because they looked like they were always reaching for the sky. She told them that kindness felt like a soft color, not bright, not loud. Just there. Mr. Johnson stopped by with a proud grin. "You're a star, princess," he said. "I'm just here to clap." Sarah stood to the side, watching it all. She did not need to speak much. She watched her daughter be seen, truly seen, by strangers who had no old stories, no old habits, just new eyes and open hearts. She watched Amara laugh easily and point to little brushstrokes she loved. She felt the quiet joy of a mother who had promised to protect her child and was seeing that promise bloom into confidence. That night, when they came home, they put the paintings on the living room wall. The room looked different with them there. It looked like a place where life was growing, not just passing through. Sarah tucked Amara into bed, listened to her, chatter about the people she met, and smiled at the last sleepy sentence. "Today I felt big." After Amara fell asleep, Sarah turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a moment. She thought about the first moments at the BBQ, the quiet hurt, the heavy air. She thought about the limousine. She thought about how the world can change when even one person chooses to show open respect, and how that respect can spark more. She thought about soft colors, steady choices, and the way courage sometimes looks like a small girl holding a paintbrush and smiling at strangers. She whispered into the quiet room, not for anyone to hear, just to place TH as